The new E, the new attitude. Brought to you by Mercedes-Benz.
Bank Negara's Monetary Policy Committee has decided to maintain the overnight policy rate at 1.75%, marking the 7th consecutive meeting in which the key policy rate is maintained. The last adjustment was back in July 7, 2020, which saw a 0.25 basis point cut from 2%. In a statement, the central bank notes the continued recovery in the global economy, supported by improvements in manufacturing and services activities, although the strength of recovery remains varied across countries. BNM points out that economies with better progress in their vaccination programs have eased containment measures, enabling a continued recovery in domestic activity. For Malaysia, the reimposition of nationwide containment measures to curb the resurgence in COVID-19 cases had dampened growth momentum, although BNM says the recent gradual relaxation for economic sectors to operate, the higher adaptability of firms, and continued policy support would partly mitigate the impact. The central bank says the further easing of containment measures, rapid progress of the domestic vaccination program, and continued expansion in global demand will support the growth momentum going into 2022. Risks, however, still remain tilted to the downside due to a number of factors such as the impact of new COVID-19 variants of concern and a weaker than expected global growth recovery. The MPC still considers the stance of monetary policy to be appropriate and accommodative, but says that it continues to be determined by new data and information and their implications. Ex-PM Datuk Seri Najib Razak and his son Datuk Muhammad Nasifuddin have failed in their appeal against a court decision to allow a summary judgment against them over unpaid taxes. The amounts are 1.69 billion for Najib and 37.6 million for Nasifuddin. Court of Appeal Judge Datuk Abdul Karim Abdul Jalil says it finds no merit in these two appeals and no error in the judgment of the two High Court judges, which should be corrected. Both appeals were dismissed with costs of 10,000 ringgit each. Najib's lawyer Tan Sri Muhammad Shafi Abdullah then asked the Court of Appeal for an interim stay of today's judgment pending further appeal at the Federal Court. This was allowed on the condition that the notice of appeal is filed at the Apex Court latest by next week. Najib was watching the proceedings via Zoom. The government through IRB had filed bankruptcy proceedings against Najib at the High Court in April, while the IRB instituted bankruptcy proceedings against Nasifuddin in May. IHH Healthcare share price rose as much as 30 cents or 4.69% to a record high of 6 ringgit 70 today. While it was unable to hold on to those gains, it still managed to close 3.3% up at 6 ringgit 61 and was the fifth top gainer on the bourse today. Year to date, IHH's share price had risen by 21%, with its market capitalization standing at 58.56 billion. In a filing with the bourse today, IHH notes that the Employees Provident Fund disposed of a total of 1.99 million shares and acquired a further 350,000 shares on September 3rd. As it stands, the EPF currently has a 8.85% direct stake in IHH. As at March 31st, 2021, the largest shareholder in the group was Japan's Mitsui & Co. with a 32.9% stake in the healthcare group. Last month, IHH returned to the black for the first half of FY21, reporting a net profit of 858.9 million versus a net loss of 440.4 million posted the year before. Revenue improved 34.2% to 8.22 billion as more patients returned to the group's hospitals as lockdowns gradually eased. The Economic Club of Kuala Lumpur Advisory Council Chairman Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Omar says Malaysia needs to reform its labour policies to address matters including the country's foreign worker issue. He says this needs immediate attention amid forced labour allegations against oil palm planters and rubber glove makers. Abdul Wahid, who is also Bursa Malaysia Chairman, says that in line with global commitment towards environmental, social and governance, many global businesses will exclude companies that are accused of engaging in forced labour practices and modern slavery from the supply chain. He highlighted the two concerns that the Malaysian government needs to address, the first being the need to engage the US government to secure the removal of the US Customs and Border Protection's withhold release orders against certain companies. The second is in respect of the policy on the appointment of the foreign recruitment agents which charge exorbitant fees. The Malaysian Aviation Commission has approved the merger between Korean Airlines Co. and Asean Airlines. As the merger involves air passenger services between South Korea and Malaysia, Korean Airlines and Asean Airlines submitted a voluntary notification and application of an anticipated merger to Mavcom on March 19th. Mavcom notes that the anticipated merger constitutes a failing firm defender merger. Asean Airlines has been in a situation of financial distress for some time and cannot be rehabilitated but for the proposed merger. The Commission says this decision is the first competition-related merger case to be analysed by any competition authority or sector regulator in Malaysia. In the final decision, Mavcom concluded that while Korean Airlines and Asean Airlines post-merger market share of one direct route between Seoul and Kota Kinabalu would be higher, the merger would not cause any unilateral effects or act as a barrier to entry and expansion for the related markets. Mavcom also found that the merger would result in significant economic efficiencies and social benefits such as improved safety, reduced training costs as well as efficiencies related to maintenance, repair and overhaul.
This program was brought to you by Mercedes-Benz.